Court Administrator's Office.
Hello. I am calling you. I have sent you a letter that you had requested that I sent you, and I'm wondering, in a letter I received from you and on your website, you say that you cannot do anything about court rulings, but I'm wondering, what if those court rulings actually violate the rules of the court?
Um, I should probably have you talk to our Deputy State Court Administrator, and he has somebody in with him right now. Can I have him call you back?
Well, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Um,
I need your name and phone number.
My name is Jeff Soboroff, and my phone number is 563-579-0553. And I have been looking online because my court-appointed backup attorney refused to do anything that the last judge I talked to at hearing told me the man was going to do. And one of the most interesting things I've noticed about anyone the court has appointed to help me with this is that since this is a criminal case, how come the court can't find me a criminal attorney? And when I get attorneys that aren't criminal attorneys, they're all telling me that they don't do research. But the thing is, I would think that any attorney would know how wrongful it is for a court to ignore exculpatory evidence and not to allow a defendant to present any. I have had the police actually pad my rap sheet. And the only reason why I have a rap sheet, the only reason why I have any criminal offenses on my record at all or convictions is because it seems that the 7th Judicial District in Iowa specializes in breaking its own rules. And I have talked to a lot of people online, and they tell me the same thing. I cannot get a criminal attorney to be appointed as my backup attorney for a criminal case. And I have been told by the court that I'm not going to be allowed to bring in my laptop into the courtroom. I thought my backup attorney would do that for me. Since I'm not an attorney, they don't want a street person to bring in their computer, like I'm going to have Simtex in it or something. There's got to be some kind of rule that prevents a judge adhering from lying to a defendant. Wouldn't you think so?
Can I put you on hold a minute? I have another call.
Thank you. That's okay. You put me on hold there. That would be fine. actually an interesting piece of music, but I'm going to pause this because I don't think you should have to listen to it. This is important stuff. What I'm doing is necessary. People are supposed to be able to do what I do. Except your newspaper would never do this because your newspaper uses hospitals. They advertise. They charge them a lot per column inch. You know, I have a suspicion that the Judicial Qualifications Board, who is the person that I was talking to, the receptionist or whatever she is, has put me on hold. And it's just a few minutes to 4. And I'm sure that since this is a state office, they shut down at 4. And this music's going to be playing until well past the time that everyone has left the office. But we'll see. Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay. Um, so, yes, did I send you a letter telling you that we have received your other material?
I know that you have received my other material, but
Okay.
you know, the only reason I've been falsely accused of doing something is because the County of Scott and the 7th Judicial District and the federal government took offense because I investigated a case of child abuse which was promulgated by the Social Security Administration and the Justice Department. And I proved that on the web. I used to be a rich guy, and I took around $8,000 out of my Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Spencer, and Smith account. And now Pierce, Spencer, and Smith are spending my money in Tahiti. And I bought some video equipment. Some of it so small and sophisticated you could put it in the buttonhole of your shirt. And I caught everybody, including the local constabulary who were helping people sell interstate drugs. During the time I did this, I was shot at more than 24 times. And every time I would call the local police to tell them where they could pick up the brass, provided an automatic weapon had been used, I was charged with harassing the police. I don't consider that harassment, but apparently policemen who are getting a kickback, and I know they were getting a kickback because the person whose case I investigated was a really sweet person. I eventually married her. This is a person who had been determined to be retarded by the Social Security Administration, and I can tell you that I knew her from 1994 unto the present, and she is not retarded. And I know because of her Social Security file that I had until the people of Calamus were allowed to torch my house and then go into it after, you see on these crime shows about how they put up a piece of tape and they say crime scene, do not enter.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was allowed to enter my house, and I was charged with arson from having my house torched by 2 teenagers who happened to be the daughters of the person who owned the redneck Nazi bar at the end of the block. I bought a derelict bar from a person where I had played in this bar. And the only reason I moved to Calamus is because the Rock Island police in Illinois allowed people to hunt me. And at the time, I thought that I wanted to live. But you know, that was a big mistake. And when I went to state prison for a crime which the Iowa Supreme Court eventually exonerated me, I was then turned on by the federal government and charged with a crime I couldn't possibly have done because I was in a state prison. And I had written 3 letters. I wrote to the Baltimore Social Security Office, and I wrote to the Clinton County Social Security Office, of which there is no more Clinton County Social Security Office. And I wrote to the Davenport Social Security Office, who was in control of that Clinton County office. And I told them that I was going to go to jail and they needed to stop my checks. And they refused to do it. And a friend of mine who had over $100,000 worth of everything that I spent my life earning, honestly, decided that he would keep it. And the federal government let him. And when I got out of prison, I slept in dumpsters so that I could buy some more guitars and do my trade. And when I started to do my trade, the Davenport Police Department, who figure prominently in my website because they help people sell interstate drugs, decided that they would make the rounds of these places. And they told the people who owned these various clubs that they could lose their food and their liquor licenses if they allowed me to use their venues to play. And I have the records of what I was getting on Social Security, who now claim that there was an overpayment. And the fact of the matter is, before the federal government arrested me, I was getting my full amount of Social Security, which kind of proves there was no overpayment. But the legal aid attorney, Alex Cornea, who happens to be a federal attorney too, decided that he wouldn't present that evidence at whatever function he decided to deal with Social Security, and there was never a hearing. So this guy, who's supposed to be a licensed attorney, worked with Social Security so they could get even with me for naming the names of every federal puke who was supposed to prevent a person from being raped all of her life. Wanda Butler's file shows that she was obtained through human traffic as an infant. And at the age of 5, the drug dealing sociopaths who managed to get a hold of this person started renting her out as a masturbatory wash rack. That ruined her life. Wanda never wanted to have that kind of lifestyle. And when she approached me and told me that she needed a place to live, and then she told me that she was locked out of the Social Security office, I couldn't imagine why. I had seen her around for years. And you know, even though Wanda was not a classically beautiful woman or anything like that, there was just this vibe there, and I liked her. And when I found out how terrible her life had been, I started a website, partially because of her, and partially because I've been a professional musician since I was 13. By the time I was 16, I was playing in recording studios and making $500 an hour. And you know, the first thing that happened after two cops who were selling dope in a rock and roll club in Scott County in Devonport smacked me on my head and made it so I couldn't play the guitar. When I was misdiagnosed with having serious mental illnesses, I was told that I could never play the guitar, that my ability to play was merely a product of my mind, and that was the product of a paranoid or a grandiose illusion or delusion. Now I'm dealing with a court system which has allowed for nearly 40 years a hospital that is tired of me writing about them because in the year 2000, a friend of mine, a guy I played in bands with and who was a tremendous guy, Mondo Cahalis, was having a respiratory problem. And his friends took him to a Genesis Health System hospital. And because he didn't have an insurance card, they threw him out of the hospital and he died 2 hours later. And I've been griping about that on the web ever since. And now they're claiming that I called up a emergency room and I threatened the life of a doctor, which I didn't do. And you know, every call in every state that goes into an emergency room is recorded. And the court refuses to let me obtain that recording. But the most interesting thing about this case is that I'm still supposed to be crazy. And even though I won a civil suit, and even though the court sent me for further therapy, because in 1985, this hospital said the same thing. Basically, they said that I threatened to launch, shoot, discharge, or throw an incendiary device into the hospital. And I was alleged to have said that while I was talking to their crisis line, which, by the way, also went into their emergency room. And they refused to allow that to be played before trial. When I got out of jail and read my indictment, it was a curious thing because the first thing that indictment said that it came to the attention of the business office. And the reason it came to the attention of the business office is because, well, these people were treating me for my alleged mental illness. They had to keep changing my diagnosis every 2 weeks because every drug that they gave me was not only contraindicated for the head injury, it was proven at a civil trial that I had. And that was proven because the court found after 8 months worth of hearings, when I was charged with this crime I didn't do, that 4 doctors finally came into court and they all lied. They lied about tests that I was allegedly given that I wasn't given. And when I got out of an 8-day hold, and I was told I was in no need of mental treatment at this time, it only took them 3 weeks to send me a bill for $3,000. Now that was an involuntary stay. You don't get charged for involuntary stays, but the hospital claimed that they had given me testing, which not only proved that I didn't have a head injury, but it also proved that I was allegedly just as mad as a hatter. Well, Judge Werling, who is now deceased, but his son is now a judge, he was looking at my criminal file. And when the last doctor testified, and he was waiting for this guy because the last doctor was Thomas Garside, and Thomas Garside had been picked up for DUI over 12 times. and he was waiting for him, and he stopped Thomas during his repertoire, and he said to Mr. Garside, "I'm looking at the defendant's criminal file, and I don't see the tests that you claim to have given him in a locked ward." And they don't have time. Interesting, no? I'm supposed to be talking to somebody here, and the office is going to close.
Right.
I know the office is going to close.
We close here in a few minutes.
Well, the thing is, when I make these recordings and I'm talking to any kind of body that could be adversarial, I record this on my laptop, and then I put them on YouTube. Now, I don't know what you people are going to do, but I would think that it is wrongful and something that the court should be sanctioned for when a judge who's presiding at hearing lies to a defendant. And what's really amazing is that out of the two attorneys who are supposed to be my backup attorneys in this, not one of them is a criminal attorney. And they both told me that they don't get that it is not in the scope of what they do to research the case that they're supposed to be helping me with. Every conviction that the state of Iowa has produced in my case has only been acquired because of the rule the court violates about the exculpatory evidence rule. I'm a journalist online. I've talked to a lot of people who wonder about that. Why is exculpatory evidence in the 7th Judicial District suppressed? I don't think the court's supposed to do that. It says so in the court rules. I've done a lot of research that I really shouldn't have had to do because I'm being charged with crimes that I didn't commit. This has been going on since 1985. You know, it was only because Judge Werling in 1985 found that there were no tests in my criminal file, sent me out of Scott County to a private physician who was not associated with a hospital. I then met a couple of doctors, one a very good shrink who gave me a clean bill of health, and another a neurologist who found that when Laurel Mulvaney and Hal Wilkerson beat me in my head with nightsticks they shouldn't have been carrying. Well, they were bouncers because bouncers aren't allowed to carry deadly force. And they're also trained not to hit you in your head, had given me a seizure disorder. And after taking Tegretol for a few months, I could play the guitar again, and I wasn't pooping in my pants anymore. You know, this has caused me a lot of grief. Now, I'm talking to Michael Avenatti, who's got some bigger fish to fry. But I'm thinking I need to sue the 7th Judicial District. I think Michael Avenatti thinks so too. Now, when am I going to be able to have an honest day in court? When am I going to go to a hearing where a judge isn't going to lie to me? And at the bench, when will it be suggested? You know, I didn't want to have an attorney at all because I knew it would be an aggravating experience. This is a criminal case. It's amazing that a criminal attorney is not appointed by the court to help me deal with it. That's not proper. It's not proper that an attorney who's supposed to help me with the criminal case is telling me, well, it's not within my scope to research a case. But I would think that any attorney would know about the exculpatory evidence rule. It's part of the rules of court, isn't it?
Well, we don't have any jurisdiction over attorneys. If you want to file a complaint on an attorney, that's for a different office.
I know, and that office has shown itself to be a good old boys club. I mean,
we have nothing to do with attorney disciplinary.
Well, what I'm wondering is if the Judicial Qualifications Board is a good old boys club for judges. Because are you going to give leave to all of the judges who have presided in this case to be lying to me? They tell me they're going to appoint a backup attorney who's going to help me with things. Now, this is a criminal case, and I want to depose the state's witnesses. And they don't want me to do that because the main witnesses I want to depose are the police, who apparently decided to pad my criminal file. A criminal file which only exists because every time I've been charged with a crime, the court has violated its own rules in order to convict me. I have had court-appointed attorneys plead me guilty against my will. I'm told that that's not right, legal, or even possible. But I'm here today to tell you that at the age of 67, that I have been pled guilty against my will over half a dozen times. I was even pled guilty against my will in federal court. And the person who was appointed to be my attorney after I had my federal defender dismissed, because my federal offender wanted to do it too. And my federal offender got dismissed because his investigator was a guy who was retired from the Rock Island Police Department. The police department that I started to investigate first when the Butlers told me that they had a deal with the cops on both sides of the river and they could do whatever they wanted to do. And I should allow Wanda to sell their product out of my house, that nothing would happen to me. And I didn't believe them. And then they started to harass my parents. And my parents had an unlisted number that Wanda did not know. Now, there's only two places where you can get an unlisted number. You can get an unlisted number from the customer who owns it, or you can get it from the phone company. The only people who could get that from the phone company are the police. I think we both are aware of that. Now, I don't know what you people are going to do, but if you guys don't do something before I have my preliminary hearing, I'm going to have to write all over the web about how you are a good old boys club, and you will allow judges to do anything that they want to do to a person who is only politically convenient because he recovered from a head injury and he's mad as hell and he is not going to take it anymore. Remember, that's a quote from Albert Finney. Network was the movie that was in. I won a felony trial once because I was allowed by Judge Van Zee, who was a very fair guy, to defend myself during a felony trial for a felony I proved to a jury I did not commit. I'm not an attorney, and I won a felony trial. And after that happened, the prosecutor, who has destroyed 4 post-conviction relief applications, and now after nearly a year of wrangling with that, and that case has languished in court for over 8 years, I find that Clinton County has not only destroyed 4 post-conviction relief applications, but some of the very evidence they used against me at those hearings and trials. They're not supposed to do that. I want to get an expert witness to testify to the fact that when I made these alleged phone calls, a drug that, a Lyrica, that Judge Nancy Tabor ordered me to take.
Okay, our office we're about ready to.
I know that, and I was supposed to be talking to somebody in a higher pay grade than receptionist. I haven't been able to talk to him yet.
Well, I believe I told you that he had somebody in with him, and I took your
Well,
name
I'll
and
tell
phone
you
number.
what I'm going to do. I'm a journalist. So
Okay.
You open up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning?
Yes.
Well, good. I'll be on the phone at 8 because I'm going to cover this story. This one's interesting. This is potentially how people who are supposed to deal with judges are maybe a good old boys club and maybe you are not. I've been raised to be an Orthodox Jew, and I abide by the law, even though the record which has been obtained was only obtained because the court wants to ignore its own rules. I think that's a serious matter. And I think your office should think it's a serious matter when a person's appointed their own attorney and then they're not allowed to depose policemen who have entered a false record on my rap sheet. And I can prove that because I have witnesses. And now they don't want me to subpoena anybody for depositions or trial. That is serious business, don't you think? So I need to find out from somebody who works in your office what the hell has been going on with my cases for the last 30 some years. Okay? And I don't expect that just because I'm going to be persistent that I'm going to be charged with harassment. I expect to talk to somebody tomorrow well before noon. And I expect to get an answer and a promise that you're going to do something so that I can get a fair trial. Because if I go to jail, I've already found out from federal and state prison that even though I won a lawsuit against the Department of Corrections in Iowa, that I'll never get a kosher meal anywhere in Iowa. And if I'm not fed kosher, I'm not going to eat. You know, it only took Bobby Sands 59 days to starve to death when he was locked up for bombing people. I'm not bombing people. I'm just writing the truth on the web. Now, you know, anybody can write what they want about me on the newspaper. Anybody can say anything about alleged criminality that I didn't commit. But I can't tell the truth on the web. It appears that the agencies that you like to represent can dish it out, but they can't take it. Well, I'm a journalist. I've been adjudicated to be a journalist, both in state and federal court. I'm allowed to do this. And if you want to block me from talking to somebody in your office, that's fine, because then I can say that you refuse to comment. And then I can pretty much say whatever I want because I've got the record to back me up. And the record is that the state of Iowa doesn't care about exculpatory evidence. They don't care about about that because there are people who are politically inconvenient. There are people who don't care if you have guns. You know, I have been beaten up by the Davenport Police Department a number of times.
Yeah, yes, I realize that. You've told me that several times.
And you know, I'm going to start publishing pictures of my broken dentures that
okay, well,
fell
it
out
is
of my
4:30
mouth.
and we're shutting down. So
Yes, well, I knew that when I called you a half hour before you were shutting down. And I have already commented on this tape that I wasn't going to be talking to anybody because you were going to shut down before I got to talk to somebody. And now I have a 35-minute effusion that I'm going to publish online.
okay.
Now, I don't want to publish the same thing tomorrow. So when I call you up at 8 o'clock, I expect to be connected to somebody who's not going to be too busy to talk to me, and I expect to be talking to somebody in a pay grade that can actually offer me some kind of a promise of action. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Bye.
And the story. This is Dmitry Ivanovich with the naked truth. I'm really not naked. I got my pants on. But you know. Amazing, isn't it? People tell me I ought to write a book. I think I'm too close to this story to write a book. I really need to have a ghostwriter. Because to tell you the truth, when I write about some of this, I just cry. I don't cry about what happened to me. I cry about what has happened to Wanda Butler and what is still continuing to happen to her. Thank you for your time. I believe these things are important. I've talked to Michael Avenatti's office twice. His office has not told me they're not going to handle my case. I don't have any money to give to Mr. Avenatti. But you know, the county of Clinton does. They are a deep pocket defendant. And the county of Scott is a deep pocket defendant. So, Mr. Avenatti, if you're listening to this tape, please have pity on an old hippie. Please help me. I think you're the only person who could or would. I've never broken the law. I only tried to help a person who's been raped all of her life. And for doing that, I spent almost 5 years in state and federal custody. And for almost that whole time, I lived on bread and water because they wouldn't feed me kosher food. And I even won a lawsuit against the DOC who threw out everything. I couldn't get dental care. I lost my teeth. They rotted out from the tip of the root to the gum line. I'm always going to have phantom pain about that. And when I got out of prison, the Davenport police, who were beating my head against the wall, caused my denture to fall out of my mouth, and they made 2 pieces out of it. In the next video, in our next program, in our next episode, I'll have those handy so that I can display them. The police shouldn't be allowed to step on your denture. I guess I'm lucky they waited until it fell out of my mouth to step on it. I suppose they could have just stepped on my head, which, by the way, they have done. Happy trails until we meet again.